Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel and the um, Mid South Wrestling Review Series. We are moving into February 1982. As mentioned, we will have the entire series up. My goal is by sometime in early January. Don't know how that's going to go, but we'll make do with what we have and see what we can do. And again, this is using the WWE Network material. I will be going back and finding through other sources missing shows at the end of this archive. So be on the lookout for that. Bob Orton Jr. versus Ken Woodley. Orton Jr., of course, a big star in this area, or at least a medium star in the area. He does go on to the WWF at the end of this year, so that's there as well. Takedown Ride Time by Orton Jr. Of course, Orton Jr., the father of Randy Orton, and probably, honestly, I would say the better wrestler of the two. Maybe not the bigger star, because the one challenge he has is ultimately that he does not have the ability to talk nearly as well as his son does. But in terms of being a better technical wrestler, I think Orton Jr. is the better of the two. Just my personal opinion. Anyway, arm bars and works the arm for quite a few minutes, does Orton Jr., and he's pretty persistent about doing that. There is a rather big angle in this particular episode. By the way, I am caught up through the month of March, so those 8 episodes are going to be up within the next couple of hours. That's my goal anyway. Rolls him onto the back and still holding onto the arm. They get like 3.5 minutes out of this armbar, which, again, guys couldn't do that today. And everyone says, "Oh, that's boring." No, that's treating wrestling like a sport, as opposed to an acrobatic Cirque du Soleil show. And I think, if you want to say wrestling as acrobats, that's fine if that's your thing. And I think there is a market for that, but I don't think that's the national market. Anyway, backbreaker and a leaping elbow drop, almost like a Vader bomb type maneuver by Orton, and then he nails a sit down pile driver. I say sit down because he basically rocks back into a seated position. Appa and Sika move away from the managerial advisement of Ernie Ladd. They have broken with Ladd. Ladd does not know this when he goes into the interview segment here, and they decide and side with General Skandar Akbar. Akbar, in a later interview, which we will get to in the coming episodes, basically implies that, in fact, the Iron Sheik was stolen from Akbar at an earlier point. Ladd gets laid out, brawl and beaten down, and his leg and knee tormented, and some would say broken, in the layout with the Samoans. Samoans obviously siding with Akbar in a very aggressive way. This is I assume because Ladd needs surgery, as the surgery is shown in the upcoming weeks of Mid-South television, and from the standpoint and the respect that is done in a manner which would certainly make most people think that there's damage to be had there, or there's education to be had there. Anyway, we move into Ted DiBiase and Ron Cheethan. Not particularly a match that needed to happen, but it happens regardless, just because DiBiase manages to hit, and he still is your North American champion at this juncture, which, again, North American champion, for those that were unfortunate enough not to follow Mid-South because you're too young or whatever the case may be, that is basically the equivalent of the World Championship for this territory. Ride time by DiBiase early, and he manages to get a power slam, among other things. He's here, I believe, pretty much right through 87 here in Mid-South. So the evolution of Ted DiBiase before the $1 Million Man, if that's something you're into, you can stay with us week by week through that process. I've seen most of 82 and I think all of 83, but 84 and 85 are new to me, as are 86 and 87 if I can find them. Shots to the top of the head by DiBiase. Chops in the corner. DiBiase, of course, a huge babyface. Beals the man out of the corner. Probably the top babyface in the area. Drop kick by DiBiase, which you don't see that many of. And post this match, after a DiBiase win, we see Akbar basically endorsing his demand for a title match for the Samoans. And we kind of go in that direction, I do believe, next. JYD and Mike George, your tag team champions, are up next, and they do fight the Wild Samoans. And when you say fight, I mean fight. This is certainly not a technical masterpiece. It's not meant to be. JYD still hugely over, and some challenges there. It's interesting to me that when you look at promotions lasting long term, it's not as big as people think in terms of Mid-South. I think incorporates in 1977. They're out of business by 87, 10 years. The world-class name really goes nationally and is acknowledged from about 81, well, maybe the late 70s under that name, although starting the name of World Class 81 through 88, and that's the end of their major run. So it's just amazing to me that when people say, I can't believe TNA or what is now Impact has been around for 20 years, I can't believe this promotion has been around for, Ring of Honor lasting as long as they have has been a miracle. Just interesting that long-term promotions other than WWF and the like are pretty rare under the same name anyway. But we see a rather slow match as Junkyard Dog starts with some brawling and then takes the match down to a chinlock. I think people forget that Dog can be in longer matches if they're tags, but usually his singles matches are relatively short. We see things go into a nerve hold, and the Samoans cut the ring off a little bit. George goes to the outside. There is a crossbody and a pinfall. Meanwhile, on the outside, there is the use of a steel chair. Akbar comes into the ring, and Dog finally uses the chair on one of the Samoans. Akbar backing up because, well, he doesn't want to use a chair. Attempted fireball thrown by Akbar. Doesn't necessarily connect because Dog still maintains control of the match. Tackled to the outside of the ring by the Junkyard Dog on one of the Samoans. Mike George comes back in. The referee, by this point, has pretty well disappeared. He's been knocked down in the earlier stage of the match. A Samoan drop right on top of the chair that the Dog brought in, and the Samoans 1, 2, 3 get their victory and I believe return to being your tag team champions, which would be popular for that time, as the Bill Watts tends to be more of a chase guy as far as the championships are concerned. Bob Roop and Frank Monty up next. Roop is obviously aligned with Paul Orndorff, among others. There will be others for Roop to align with in the weeks and months to come here, although within a couple of months, the alliance within about a month, the alliance with Orndorff a bit tenuous, to say the very least. Roop, with more of a technical style, goes to the headlock quite a bit and is pretty dominant with it. Snaps him up, German suplex, and Monty does kind of get some ride time, wrestles out. I love the fact that enhancement talents are given enough offense to not look like goofs. I think that's something that is missing in today's content. And head scissors takeover by Monty. Monty, does the standing head scissors as well. Really comes up, I wouldn't say aggressively, but rather assertively. And there is a back to working on the arm, drops the elbow on the arm, and the like. Ride time by Roop. Roop actually continues to work the arm pretty aggressively and before getting a victory. And we move forward. Another kind of main event-ish style match at the time is Paul Orndorff and Mr. Olympia, which is up next. One thing I like about this area as well, as we see a dropkick from Frank Monty, but one thing I like about the area as well is they were giving main event matches without killing the territory all the way back here in 1982. So the idea that you can't find a way to find balance between enhancement matches and main event matches is such a misnomer. Uh, why they struggle to do it today, I don't understand. Shoulder breaker is what gains Bob Roop the victory, and then we move on to that pretty main event match in Orndorff and Mr. Olympia. I believe Louisiana champion is Olympia here, and Orndorff starting to look a little scruffy. Within about a month, he's grown a complete beard. I don't necessarily like Orndorff with facial hair, to be completely honest. I'm used to him being clean shaven. I think he looks better that way. Anyway, to work on the arm goes Olympia. Olympia also a mainstay in the area. Pretty much, this is the top place that he works. I mean, he does work other places, but Olympia is certainly a mainstay in the Mid-South Territory and remains that way for several years. And it's interesting because I think back then, I mean, they were putting 1,500, 2,000 miles on a car. Some people wouldn't like that, but he, I guess, had a family and a home in the area and chose to, do that. I can honestly say, me, the person, no, I never made it nationally. I'd love to start my own company someday, but I'm going to do it right and actually pay the guys rather than this BS that most independent companies do where, $20 and a hot dog and they send you on your way. And if I can't pay people what they're worth, then I'm not going to run. But anyway, one thing that's really interesting to me, as we see an Atomic Drop by as a major move from Mr. Olympia, one thing that's amazing to me is that there were guys who could make a living in one territory. Amazing athleticism by Orndorff in this match. If you've never seen Orndorff prior to his WWF stuff, his Mid-South stuff is definitely worth seeing. But you actually see him do a leap up to the second rope with a second rope clothesline, which is more athleticism than a lot of people would think Paul Orndorff has. I think Orndorff slowed down a bit in his WWF run around 86, 87 or so, and certainly with the arm injury, I believe, happening in 87, that's understandable. But I think the athletic version of Orndorff is featured here more than I've seen in other places. He slows the match down quite a bit, and then we see him kind of kicking away at his opponent. The attempted sleeper and the get of the sleeper here in the hands of Olympia. Orndorff tries to roll to the back. They almost do like a passing the guard type maneuver, which is really interesting to me in that way, in that time, and Orndorff really fighting it. I love when you see guys fight submission holds because it gets the hold over as something that is dangerous, but that can be fought against. I think when guys completely go down for a hold immediately, I think it kills it. But also, I think when guys fight too hard, that kills it as well. Olympia comes out with the victory here. Ed Wiskowski, otherwise known as Colonel De Beers, Brian Blair will close the program today. They have about 5 minutes, which which one thing I love and one thing I would implement in my own territory is the idea of, as we see Blair with a hip toss out of the corner and some good tackles. But one thing I like is the idea of a standby match and also matches ending without a finish, because the idea that a match can be fit into 60 minutes or 90 minutes is just goofy. If it's real, if it's a sport, then there should be that wonder, and sometimes matches don't end in time. Anyway, De Beers hits a interesting stun gun followed by a slingshot over the back. De Beers at this point really does look, or Wiskowski does look quite aggressive, assertive, and put together. He's pretty well dominant for the next couple of minutes, although Blair doesn't, die per se like a lot of babyfaces would in the situation. Fights from underneath, registers. He's obviously been hurt, and Wiskowski is and has been a major deal. Blair hits the knee lift, and I'm pretty sure this one goes off the air without a direct finish. Big atomic drop by Brian Blair. As a matter of fact, I would encourage anyone who is an independent talent or thinking of becoming a talent who wants to see the blending of wrestling and high spots done well by a mid-card guy. Brian Blair, 84, well, let's see. I would even say 82 here in Mid-South through his single stuff in 84 before he starts the Killer Bees. If you can find that, those matches, learning to be a babyface like Brian Blair, probably a good idea. Anyway, so we close without a finish here in this particular match. We will be back with more right after this.